Hey y'all, my name is Susan Sparks and I'm the senior pastor here at Madison Avenue Baptist Church in New York City. We are a diverse community brought together by faith. We hope that you enjoy our service today.
Sing praise to God who reigns on high, the God of all creation, the God of power, the God of love, the God of our salvation. With healing balm my soul is filled, and every faithless murmur stilled. To God all praise and glory.
I thought we'd do something a little different this morning. I thought I'd give the sermon down here. So here I am. It's Stewardship Sunday. And how do we know that? Well, there's a few hints. First of all, the preacher's wearing green. Little subtle hint for everyone. But if that's not clear enough to you, I have worn my TV evangelist shoes. Everybody see this? Yes. I don't know if y'all caught these. Yes. Just, can you do a close-up for our live stream audience? So if you act now and send a check-in for $19.95, I'll send you a whole compilation of my favorite sermons and a piece of the true cross. All right, I'm kidding. I don't have any of the cross, okay? But we will take your check later in the conversation today. So today is Stewardship Sunday, and as most of you know, I was preaching at Marble Collegiate Church last Sunday. That was their Stewardship Sunday. And so what I'd like to share with you today is a version of that sermon that I shared at Marble. I always like to say when I go out and guest preach, it's a best hits of Madison Avenue Baptist Church. I love to take some of the favorite stories and lessons and craft them around sermons that I might have presented here before. So while some of the stories may be familiar to you today, what I've done is crafted them, pulled them from years of other sermons, and put them within a framework that I hope might be a little different and also might bring you maybe a bit of inspiration, something to think about today. So we're talking about stewardship, but I like to think of stewardship in a much broader term, and that's what I like to think of as generosity. You know, generosity is, it's really the essence of Jesus' teachings. You know, love your neighbor as yourself. Generosity it's the manifestation of our highest and best selves. It's a way that we come at the world, a way we could come at the world, and in fact, that we could change the world. You know, at Marble, I shared some of Brian's great signs out in front of the church. You know, always the big hit is honk if you love Jesus, text while driving if you want to meet him. You know, that's always the one that people love the best. But the sign that I really highlighted was one that he put up a couple of weeks ago, and you might remember it. It was a quote by the Buddha, and it said, "One moment can change a day. One day can change a life, and one life can change the world." And that's what I want to talk about today, is how we can change the world by letting go of all of the things that block us from this great power of generosity. And I thought I'd start out with a little story just to lay some foundation. A story about Toby's cabin up in Wisconsin that I know everyone's heard about. A great little cabin way up for the visitors. We have a cabin up in northern Wisconsin up towards the Canadian border. And every year we go, we have sort of a ritual for our first day there. We usually get there late at night, and the next morning we get up and make some really strong coffee, sometimes pretty awful strong coffee, but it, does the trick. And then we go out in the dock and fish. And we catch little panfish, hopefully, or little bluegill. We fry them up, and we make scrambled eggs with cheese, because it's Wisconsin. You got to have the cheese in there, and blueberry muffins, and we just have a big breakfast. And it's just a great ritual to start the trip, except for one summer. And that particular summer, we started out with the ritual, and then we finished the kitchen, cleaning up, and we put the trash, the eggshells, the fish guts, all that stuff in a trash can, and we left to run some errands. Now, two things that you need to know about that cabin. One, it's not air conditioned. And two, it was going to be 90. Brian's going, no, I know where this is going. I know where this is heading. It's going to be 94 degrees that day. Yeah, you see, yeah. So we come back, got about 10 feet from the door, and just knocked over by the smell. It was so bad. So we made like a little gas mask of a, paper towel, ran in, grabbed the trash, ran outside, and threw it on the mulch pile. Now, do y'all know what a mulch pile is? Are y'all familiar with that? Some people call them compost heaps. We call it a mulch pile in Wisconsin, go figure. The funny thing is, at Marble last Sunday, the pastor did a children's sermon before my sermon where he attempted to explain what a mulch pile was. And there's all these little kids, and here we are sitting in this big old, kind of old line church, probably about 800 people sitting in there, and he goes, who here knows what a mulch pile is? And this one little boy, oh, I know. You knew that was a problem right there when he raised his hand. And so he brought the mic over, and he said, what's a mulch pile? And the little boy said, okay, so it's like this pile of dirt where you throw trash and stuff, and then like worms get in it, and they eat it. And then he paused, and he got right in the mic, and he goes, and they poop it out. It was just like there was this moment of a gasp, and then everybody broke out laughing. So, I guess that's what we're talking about, Yeah, the mulch pile where worms do their thing. But the bottom line is it's where you can throw trash, like eggshells and nasty fish guts, and they transform from trash into rich, dark dirt that you end up growing something beautiful, like a daylily, or a tomato plant, or a begonia. And that afternoon, after our trash trauma kind of subsided, all of a sudden the words of the Apostle Paul came to me. Because you never know where Paul's going to speak to you, right? And all of a sudden I heard those words, get rid of all such things. The anger, the slander, the malice, the trash. And clothe yourself in the new self. I mean, what powerful words, and especially powerful when we realize that Paul wrote those in prison. He wrote about self-renewal in a place of pain. It's possible. So here he was 2,000 years ago telling the church in Colossae, get rid of your trash. And their trash at the time was false gods, false teachings. He's like, get rid of that stuff. And clothe yourself in the new self. And 2,000 years later, Paul comes to all of us right here at Madison Avenue Baptist Church and asked two questions. The same two he asked that church back in Colossae. Number one, what trash are you carrying in your life right now? And number two, what beautiful new thing do you want to grow in its place? Let's talk about the first question just for a minute. What trash are you carrying in your life? I mean, we all have trash to a certain extent. The problem is we don't always know it's there. Sometimes it's hidden around years, generations of just ignoring it or pretending it's not there, right? I mean, it reminds me of I guess it was about 6 or 8 months ago. Y'all remember I was complaining. My back went out and I was on the floor for a couple of days. Anybody ever had that happen? Like your back goes out? Yeah, Joe, you know. And you lay on the floor. And the first couple of days it's fine because you're in pain and you don't care. But then around day 3, you've read every New York Times and you've seen every Dr. Phil episode, and there's nothing to do except look around from where you are, which means you're on the floor, you're looking under the furniture. Now, we're family, and you probably already know this about me. I'm not a great housekeeper, okay? So my view under my furniture is scary. So all of a sudden I'm looking around, I'm looking under the couch, and there is, I don't know, dust things the size of like a terrier, and leaky pens, and this kind of mysterious orange cube that was later I realized was like a wayward cheese appetizer, from years ago. The bottom line, you got to look under your couch of your house, but also your heart to find the trash. And once you find it, then honey, you got to let it go. Why? Because if you leave it in the house too long, it will stink it up, right? Now, here's the thing. If you leave it in there too long, it stinks it up because it starts to drive what we do. I mean, we think we've all heard that Emerson quote, Ralph Waldo Emerson, what we worship, we become. Or y'all remember Stephen Mann, our good friend who's now living in London. Stephen, if you're watching, this is for you, buddy. Stephen had a saying that he always shared, believe, behave, become, the 3 B's. What you believe up here over time drives how you behave. And how you behave over time drives who you become. We got to let go of that trash. We got to get rid of it, because when we do, that's when the magic happens. When we let go of it, just like those fish guts and those nasty eggshells, when we let go of our trash, it transforms. It begins to break down. When we take our burdens and hand them to a greater power, when we hand them to God, they start to break down. And they begin to transform. And all of a sudden, we're able to think about growing something beautiful and new in its place. So let's think about a couple of examples. What if, for example, what if we were able to get rid of the baggage, the trash of selfishness? Now, I see some of y'all looking at me like, well, I'm not selfish. 5 words for you: do not lie in church, okay? Don't do it. Come back to me. We all have got a little selfishness somewhere tucked away, okay? And here's the thing. If we were able to let go of that selfishness, maybe, just maybe, we could lean into a generosity of perhaps time or means. Time or means. You know, for the last year, I've been participating with a group out of ABC Metro New York, and it was called the Generosity Project. And we've been studying stewardship and the idea of generosity. And one of the things that I've learned with this consortium of ministers is this: our bank statements and our calendars are theological documents. Think about that. This afternoon, take 5 minutes, pull up your Citibank app or whatever you do, and look what you've spent money on in the last 6 months. Just look at it. Where were your priorities? Now, this is a fairly privileged question. Let me call that out. Because a lot of people, when you look at what you spent, it's rent and food, right? But if you had means beyond that, ask yourself, where did they go? Where did I spend my money? Where were my priorities? And then look at your calendar and do the same thing. Where did I spend my time for the past 6 months? Where were my priorities? What meant something? Where did I spend my precious few moments on this earth? Those documents, that calendar, and those bank statements say everything about how we live our faith or not. I mean, it's about giving of who we are and what we have. I mean, y'all may remember about 10 years ago, I did a sermon. I think it was for the women, American Baptist Women in Ministry. I can't remember. But it was a sermon for a big Baptist gathering in Las Vegas. I mean, can we just call that out? Like Baptist in Vegas? That's like putting, I don't know, like Episcopalians in an improv troupe. You know, it's just weird. Like, it just doesn't work. So here we are, we're in Vegas, and I give my sermon, and I'm standing in the pulpit waiting for the plates to come up in like Bali's Casino or something, I don't even remember. And all of a sudden, here come the plates, and among the dollar bills are poker chips. Now that may sound ridiculous, but in Vegas, those mean something. We give of what we have that means something to us. And you know what? When we do that, like we're doing today, talking about stewardship and giving, when we bring our gifts and put them with others who are giving, great things can happen. My dear friend, Dr. Otis Moss, is the pastor of Trinity Church in Chicago. Some of you may know his name, and he was sharing with me recently a project his church did. He said, Susan, I don't know if you realize it, but the #1 cause of personal bankruptcy in this country is medical debt. Medical debt. And he said that is right there is hammering my community, the level of medical debt, and our surrounding community. So Otis's church started raising money. And then they joined with other churches in Chicago and started raising money. And the next thing you know, they had about $38,000, which may not sound like a lot until you realize that you can buy debt on the open market for pennies on the dollar. So they took that $38,000 and they bought $5 million worth of medical debt and forgave every bit. Letters went out across the country. Your debt's been forgiven. Go in peace. When people come together with their gifts and join with others with their gifts, great things can happen. Well, that's one example. Let's think of another. What if we gave up the trash of, I don't know, stubbornness? Oh, the need to be right all the time? Can I have an amen? You know, come on, that's our country down to the ground right now. That's all, this is what we're about. I'm right, you're wrong, end of story. It's like this San Andreas Fault has jumped out of California and into the heart of every single American. I mentioned this a while back, y'all. And it's sitting on my desk. There's a greeting card of two little 1950s ladies with their cigarettes chatting with each other, and one goes, "All I know is one of us is right, and the other is you." That's us right there, down to the ground, right, wrong, end of story. I mean, what if, just imagine with me, what if we were able to let go of that baggage of stubbornness, of having to be right all the time? Maybe we could grow into a generosity of intellect. The idea that we could share ideas, that we could see all aspects of an issue, that we could listen and hear all aspects of an issue, that we would refuse to talk over others as they were sharing all aspects of an issue. I mean, what would that do to transform not only our interpersonal communication, but our national debate? Wow. I mean, let's think of just one more example. What if we gave up the trash of judgment? I mean, maybe it's on a personal level. Maybe something has happened in your life with a friend or work colleague or family member where you just can't let go of it. You remember that quote I shared? The person that has the most influence in your life is the person you refuse to forgive. Or maybe that judgment manifests itself in something more sinister, like homophobia, or racism, or ethnic or religious hatred. What if we were able to let go of that? Maybe, just maybe, we could lean into a generosity of privilege. The idea that we of privilege begin to share the means, access, and power that we've become so accustomed to owning. This is about a generosity of common ground, finding what we each have in common. I mean, you guys know I've spent years on a comedy tour with a rabbi and a Muslim comic, right? We started after 9/11, and the whole theme of that show is what we have in common. And Bob ends the show with this story that you may remember. He says, look, here's the thing. Two rabbis were talking, and one said to the other one, "My son's converted to Christianity. What do I do?" And the second one said, "You're kidding. My son too. What do we do?" They said, "Let's talk to God." So the two rabbis go to God, and they're like, "Both of our sons have converted to Christianity. What do we do?" And God said, "Really? My son too." Right? It's about finding common ground. And these are just, that's just 3 examples of a million. I mean, the art gallery we went to yesterday talked about or invited the idea of a generosity of prayer. It asked this incredible question. If every one of your prayers were answered, would the world change or just your world? Right? If every one of your prayers were answered, would it change the world or just your world? What if we lived into a generosity of prayer, where we would pray for not only what was good or needed in our lives, but for everyone's life, on and on. I mean, I could talk about this all day, but I know people want to get to brunch. So let me leave you with this last image. Keep preaching. Andy's the only one. Everybody else says, "No, actually, I'm hungry." One last image I want to share with you, and this is an image that I think gives a glimmer of what could be if we actually let go of this trash and lived into some of these wonderful, beautiful aspects of generosity. And that image comes from a privilege I enjoyed last spring walking the Civil Rights Trail in Birmingham, Alabama. That Civil Rights Trail ends at the 16th Street Baptist Church. And if you will remember, that is the site where on September 15th, 1963, the Klan planted a bomb under the steps of that church, injuring a number of people, but killing 4 little girls. That back wall of the church is now the most stunning stained glass you have ever seen. And as I was standing there looking at it, one of the church members came over to explain the imagery. It's a black crucified Christ, a black crucified Christ on the cross. And she explained that his right hand was flexed, pushing away the trash of hatred and violence and bigotry. And the left hand was flexed, his palm open, welcoming in the beautiful things of love and compassion and justice. And if that image wasn't powerful enough, the story of that window was equally as powerful, because when that news in '63 of that bomb hit worldwide, a little tiny fishing village in Wales where John Petts, an artist, lived, all of a sudden got wind of this, and John wants to design a window to rebuild that church. And so instead of asking a couple of rich donors to help him with this, he capped the donations at ½ a crown each, about 15 cents. And so that country came together. People lined up to give, school children lined up to give their lunch money, and they built that window. That little country, which is 6 times smaller than the state of Alabama, built that window. Why? Because they believed in something beautiful beyond the trash of racism and hatred and violence. Because they believed that a small group of people, dedicated people, could change the world. And so they did. And they gathered together, and they gave, and they built that window so that that great church could once again rise up, and that the gospel of Jesus Christ could march forward. Brothers and sisters, that right there, that's our call. It's like the great civil rights leader Howard Thurman said, God has placed a crown above each of our heads so that we can grow tall enough to wear it. God has placed a crown above each of our heads so that we will spend our lives growing tall enough to wear it. Brothers and sisters, what trash are you carrying in your life? Whatever it is, let it go. Leave it here. Put it down. Fling it on the mulch pile. Join me to grow something new in its place. Join me to leave here refreshed, revived, empowered for the battle ahead. Join me this morning, finding that place where generosity can reign. Join me. Let's change the world. And I say this morning, we start right now.
These
Thanks for joining us. Madison Avenue Baptist Church is located at 31st and Madison Avenue in New York City. Our website is www.mabcnyc.org.